a look at Ashiq is in the modern Azerbaijani society. That is the title of my presentation, and subtitle is a look at their traditional and contemporary social cultural rules. For centuries, the art of Ashiq has been a favorite art form for most Azerbaijanis. I'm going to discuss why and how this ancient art form remains vital and popular in today's Azerbaijani society. And the comparative approach I'm using with this paper is aimed to show the differences rather than the similarities of these two art forms, the Ashiq phenomenon and the Western Bardic tradition. Many of Western scholars I am acquainted with tend to view the art of Ashiq as belonging to the Bardic tradition, and they based on a number of obvious analogies with the art of troubadours and trouvères of medieval Europe. Such analogies are especially interesting because these phenomena are almost 5 centuries, as well as thousands of miles apart, not mention the fact that they belong to two distinctly dissimilar cultures. The history of the Turkic Ashiq began in late 15th, early 16th century, while the origins of their art can be traced back to the earlier tradition of the Turkic Ozan and Turkic dervish called Ashiq. A general look at all the similarities between these two art forms show that they are both typological and thematic. The art of both medieval European bards and the Ashiq can be described as syncretic. It combines literary work, musical composition, and art of performance. In the European bardic tradition, the author is not necessarily a performer of his own works. So this syncretism is a description pertaining to their art in general, rather than to the actual work of all its practitioners. In Ashiq art, the practice itself is also syncretic. Indeed, the term Ashiq itself signifies usually an artistic practice where composition and performance are inseparable. Although there is a sort of specialization among the Ashiq. Some of them are better at poetry, some others at music. There are many Ashiq who are mainly known as performers of the Ashiq repertoire, but they still compose their own verses and or music sometimes. The poetry of medieval European bards is not anonymous, and this is another instance of their typological similarity with Ashiq poetry, which, albeit oral, is not anonymous either. The traditional way of signing an Ashiq poem is to mention the author's name in the text itself, usually in the last stanza. However, it is all but impossible to attribute the authorship of music with certainty. Although many Ashiq tunes like Mirzajani, Jalili, Behmami, Dilgami, Mehmed Hüseyini, etc. are named after the famous Ashiq of the 18th-19th centuries. It does not necessarily indicate their musical authorship. Songs are often named after the author of the poem. It is equally difficult to establish when a tune was composed, but some melodies, such as most of Köroğlu songs, sound more ancient than others, judging by their musical style. I will give you a couple of examples just to listen it. If
Video clip.
That's a famous Ashiq Imran Gasabov. Now he's late, passed away. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time. Another one, also Köroğlu music of our contemporary Ashiq. I like this music. It is rhythm. It is meter of Aruz Hazaj, ta tam 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 ta tam tam tam, which is juxtaposed on this 7 ta 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 ta.
Keçer böyrəm belə qalmaz, şadan könlüm nəmə olsan, dərilərim salam almaz, şadan könlüm nəmə olsan.
Sorry, I have to stop. So these are the Köroğlu songs which are which were probably composed in the 17th century. Now listen to music which sounds to me as more modern, if the 19th century can be called modern period. So that is a young Ashiq, and this is a fragment from their concert in Louvre in 2009. The melody is more... Sorry, another fragment from the same concert. The melody is very clear. Sorry. I would prefer to give more floor to music than to my speech, but so having discussed the typological similarity of the art of Ashiq and the art of the 20th and 13th century European bards, it's however the thematic similarity that is especially strong. The Ashiq Dastan, the narrative poem which I call as a kind of medieval romance novel centered around the idea of sublime and unattainable love, is the primary material for comparison. The quest of the protagonist for the beloved fair lady, the motive of his wanderings and the hardships he suffers in the course of his quest, the mystical interpretation of these ideas as the metaphor for a quest for divine love. These are the main motifs of Dastan, which bear a striking similarity to the poetry of troubadour and trouvères. Comparing the two artistic traditions in question, it is important to mention that the differences between them, important to mention the differences between them as well. For instance, unlike the European bardic art, the art of Ashiq originated, has existed and been passed down from generation to generation as a purely oral tradition. Even today, despite the available recording technology and published collections of Ashiq poetry and sheet music, the literary and musical legacy of Ashiq is taught and learned orally. It is due to its oral form that the art of Ashiq remains the vital continuation of the legacy of Azerbaijani Ashiq. Modern Ashiq poetry preserves the language, vocabulary, traditional imagery, metaphors, and poetic forms of medieval Ashiq poetry. It uses the same language that until the middle of the 19th century, it uses the same language that Ashiq have used since the 16th century. The only difference being that until the middle of the 19th century, it had been called Turki, and now it is called Azerbaijani. In modern Iran, where majority of Azerbaijani live, the language is still called Turki, while the Azerbaijani people themselves are referred as Türkler or Azeri Türkler. Let us compare examples of the 16th century and 21st century poetry. One moment, I'll give you the translation. A poem by Ashiq Gurbani and a poem, no, yeah, I will pull it. And a poem of our contemporary Ashiq Mahmud. They share the same language, no difference actually. Gurbani der könlüm bundan sayrıdır. Ne etmişem yarım benden ayrıdır. Ayrılık mı çekip boynu eğridir. Hiç yerde görmedim düz benövşəni. Now the contemporary poetry. Səxavət gözləmə namətdən könül. Allah verən qismət sənə bəs eylər. Telli sazla qazandığın şan şöhrət, xalq yanında hörmət sənə bəs eylər. That is just the same language, actually. Both these poems are written in the form of goshma. The Ashiq poetic forms and meters, such as bayati, goshma, garaylı, tecniz, divani, etc., have all remained in use since the 16th century. Also, numerous variations were introduced over the course of time. The continuation of Ashiq art is ensured by the preservation of its literary and musical canons. Indeed, Ashiq art is of a canonical type. Variation, transformation, individual interpretation of the elements of the canon is an endless creative process that allows the canon to develop without being completely, entirely revised. By definition, an Ashiq is at once the originator, the guardian, and the developer of the tradition, and the worth of this tradition is measured by its role in Azerbaijani culture. Ashiq made Turki, actually the Azerbaijani language as spoken by many Turkic tribes of the 15th century, a language of serious literature, and they can be considered as originators of the national language, national literature in this language. Ashiq have always been the voice of the Azerbaijani people wherever they lived. Since the 16th century, I need to change it. Now I want to give you two maps. Since the 16th century, large Azerbaijani communities anywhere in Iran, here, this part, in North Azerbaijan, regions of modern Georgia, Armenia, South Dagestan have been the hubs of Ashiq culture. You see the highlighted with the red color, the regions where Ashiq culture was the most widespread. And this is the map of areas of Ashiq culture till the beginning of till the 1910s, 1912s period. And I will show you another map. If it is seen very well. And the second map shows the more or less contemporary area of Ashiq culture spread. Since the late 20th century, due to the political situation in the Southern Caucasus, where large masses of Azerbaijanis had to leave their lands that they had historically populated, the territories where the Ashiq culture was widespread have become essentially reduced, as you can see in this map. Unfortunately, I did not include all the areas in Iran, all the Ashiq areas in Iran. I hope to continue this work with our Iranian colleagues. The art of Ashiq is professional, given that the criteria of professionalism are: 1, level of professional skills, 2, dedication to this profession, and 3, formal or informal professional training system. In 2008, working on the Art of Azerbaijani Ashiq file for the UNESCO representative list of intangible cultural heritage, I compiled a questionnaire for the Ashiq and conducted a survey across Azerbaijan with the aid of the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. This survey showed, with possible deviation not taken into account, the survey showed that more than 120 persons in Azerbaijan consider the practice of the art of Ashiq their main occupation and source of income. Apart from them, there are many amateur Ashiq who are sufficiently skilled but do not consider it their main occupation. And it is impossible to establish the precise number of such amateur, but any scholar with experience in field studies will agree that the Ashiq areas of Azerbaijan, in Ashiq areas of Azerbaijan, every village has many of them. I would also like to point out that many young people have a strong interest in Ashiq art, as you will see in my documentary film, which was a part of the SOAS London University project. I'm finishing. The art of Ashiq remains popular even today in the age of pop culture, the internet, and television. To be sure, the variety of art forms available in today's Azerbaijan has inevitably led to the diversification of the listening public, and the Ashiq have now lost some of their audience as compared even to the second half of the 19th century, and especially to the first half of the 19th century. Still, the Ashiq have an important role in Azerbaijani society. They invariably participate in festivities and perform at weddings in villages and sometimes even in cities. They play concerts and their performances are broadcast on the Azerbaijani radio and television. The art of Ashiq retains aesthetic significance for the majority of Azerbaijanis, but they also have a social role. For instance, for many Azerbaijani refugees from Armenia or such occupied Azerbaijani regions as Kalbajar and Lachin, which had been the important centers of Ashiq culture, the art of Ashiq, once a part of their traditional way of life, has become a symbol of their lost home. I'm finishing. The tradition of Ashiq is not restricted to any one region of Azerbaijan or any one social class. Also, in some areas of the country, it is less popular than in others, and the Russified or westernized urban intelligentsia is generally not so enthusiastic about it. However, even they consider the art of Ashiq as an integral part of their national and cultural identity, an element of their Azeriness. And as such, as a carrier of Azeriness, Ashiq have the same role in society today as they have had for centuries.
Tamam.